Why do some people appear to be defying the aging process? What makes the difference? Appearance? Money? Health? The key ingredient is attitude, wrapped around a zest for life. They follow their passions and look forward proactively to what comes next, and it shows.
Hi, and welcome to Ageless, the show dedicated to the idea that when it comes to aging, attitude is more important than the number of candles on your cake. I'm Shelley Forrester, your host, and my guest today is Ken Kasha. Ken, welcome. Delighted to have you here. I've been in a room with you before, so the audience is in for a great treat.
Thanks.
So you travel around the world. You train people on life management skills and how to really be at the top of their game and the best they can be. So that's what I want to talk about, what you do, how you do it, and then I want to ask you a couple of questions about some cultural differences, and then maybe talk a little bit about what you personally do that you look so great.
Thank you.
So the show is called Ageless, so the first thing I'd like to do is have you tell our audience how old you are.
I just turned 61 end of October.
Happy birthday. You look fantastic.
Thank you.
So let's start with the Silva Method. What is it, and what is the premise behind it?
Wow. Silva Method, the short story would be it's a step-by-step proven process of dynamic meditation to help people enhance the quality of their lives through relaxation techniques, creative visualization, awakening intuition. And how we do it is typically in a classroom setting. You know, we offer public seminars.
So when you say meditation, because I saw before the cameras were rolling, you were closing your eyes. So do you advocate meditating every day, or do you meditate every day?
I'm convinced, no joke, I don't know if it's my genes, but I have been meditating 41 years. And first thing in the morning, it's part of just what I do. And during the day, maybe for 10 to 15 minutes, and then just before bed. It feels great. It's great for our health. It's good for your heart. It's good to prevent overwhelm. Will help us just deal with life. And it's fascinating, all the studies coming out in recent years in neuroscience about how to improve the quality of your brain, how to prevent dementias like Alzheimer's, and things that we've known, but how it's really having its place, that it's not just about mysticism or sitting on your butt and being quiet. In fact, I tend to prefer a dynamic meditation process which involves relaxation, some breathing, and also guided imagery and visualization skills, much like you would with an athlete.
So when you're teaching, and tell me again what it's called? Dynamic meditation.
Well, the process we use in the Silva Method is called dynamic meditation.
Dynamic meditation. So do you walk people through the creative visualization and the breathing technique and all of that, and then you train them to be able to do it on their own?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the fun part. That's my favorite part, just watching people literally before your eyes transform and watching their physiology change, and people come in having trouble sleeping or they're just feeling overwhelmed and stressed and tired all the time, and just to watch that shift for people.
So you talked about two things that I want to cover. First is overwhelm, and then the second is sleeping through the night, because I don't know anybody over 50 who sleeps through the night anymore. So we're going to find out today how to do that. But first, let's talk about overwhelm. What is it? What are some of the early symptoms of it? And how do you either learn not to have it in your life, or if it's thrust upon you, you can move quickly through and past?
Well, first thing I would say, it's not really a quick fix or quickly. I mean, and it's not rocket science either. It's a process, though, and that is that we're a body, mind, and spirit. So first step is to be able to identify the stressors, what's pushing our buttons. And I love your intro. Age has more to do with attitude, because our thoughts affect our feelings, our emotions, and our emotions, our feelings affect our physiology, which affects our behaviors, what we can do or can't do, or how we do it. So if we just go back to the idea of attitude, the first step is identifying that life isn't fair, and there are a lot of challenges, and it's not so much the challenges. Some of them we can control, many of them we cannot. So it's not so much the life event, but how we perceive it and how we interpret that life event, which will determine the outcome, the results, how it affects us. So it doesn't change the fact, like what just happened here, the horrible storm and people without their homes and the damage and the devastation. It's horrible. That doesn't change. But it's interesting to see some of the people who, it's almost hard to believe that they maintained an optimistic, hopeful attitude. At least we're alive. At least my family's intact, and at least we still have each other, and they're getting together in the community to start to rebuild.
So, if a person is naturally optimistic or has been taught to be more positive, is it easier for those people to either move through the overwhelm more quickly or not even feel it?
Oh, definitely. In fact, there are a number of studies that would suggest that optimistic people live longer and have a better quality of life, and it's easier for them to navigate life's challenges. So, and optimism doesn't mean that we ignore the challenges, because an optimistic person is optimistic because they're very good at identifying problems and being fully aware of the challenges. They just don't wallow in them and worry excessively. You identify it, you study it, you recognize the challenge, you develop a plan, and then you take action.
So, do you also teach people to be more positive?
Oh, definitely.
So that can be
starts
taught.
With that. Sure. There's some great books, like one called Learned Optimism by Dr. Martin Seligman, who works still, I believe, with University of Pennsylvania. He's of the opinion that it's trained, it's conditioned, whether we're pessimistic or optimistic. We're sort of born neutral, and whether we turn out optimistic or pessimistic has a lot to do with our environment, our training, our upbringing, the opportunities, all of that contributes to it. So for some people, their environment or what they're raised in or the challenges they face, again, beyond their control. But what we have absolute control of is our attitude, is the way we look at them, the way we interpret it. So if people have skills, if they have some coaching, if they have some training, if they have some help, support, it makes it easier for them. But to go it alone for many people, because you mentioned like overwhelm, one of the early signals of overwhelm approaching is when we feel like we've had it up to here, and we're getting irritated at little things that usually don't bother us, or we're feeling uneasy and less tolerant of people or situations that usually oh, you know how she is, but now all of a sudden it irritates us, those are the beginning signs emotionally. Physically, some of the beginning signs are when maybe we'd like to laugh but we can't, or we'd like to cry but we feel like we can't. Or we're starting to notice sleepless, so they're directly related. Now we're not sleeping as good. And I'm finding that some people have trouble getting to sleep. I'm experiencing more people have trouble staying asleep.
Yeah.
They wake up and they're wired.
Yeah.
And they've got something going on in their head. And it's that worry, it's that thought of their children or the storm coming or the unexpected bills or what have you that keeps them awake because they're not able to turn it off.
So let's talk about that then. So most people over 50 can't sleep. Some people get up, read, watch TV. That's probably the wrong thing to do. But how do you stay asleep? And if you've woken up, how do you get back to sleep? And I think you're right. Most of it is the mind has turned on.
Right. I'm no exception to that too. I mean, I sleep well, but I'm finding now as I've grown older, I do wake up during the night at times. And if I think about it, whether it be my children or my work the next day or something coming up, whether I'm looking forward to it or concerned, then it goes on, endless. Then you like you said, you wake up. So I find is just being able to make a completion, to deal with it, and sometimes even just something saying a prayer for that person or wishing them well, or I do a visualization for them of health and well-being rather than worry. I have 3 children, although they're out of the house now, but even still, that's enough to keep anybody awake at night.
So is this also where the meditation and the visualization comes back in?
Right, so we're, like for example, being able to control your physiology, whether it be your heartbeat or your breathing. So slow, deep belly breathing, which they teach in Lamaze, which in yoga you learn. It's been around for thousands of years as part of Eastern practice. And we know physiologically that slow, deep belly breathing, inhaling very slowly, maybe to a count of 7, holding it briefly for a count of 4, and then exhaling out the mouth, like you're releasing excess for good like 7 seconds or more. If people did that when they wake up at night, it would help them get back to sleep. because the slow, deep breathing can help the body produce more serotonin. And serotonin is the precursor to melatonin, which is what gets us to sleep at night. When people are stressed, serotonin levels drop. When people are overwhelmed, serotonin levels drop, and that's part of why it becomes a vicious cycle. So there are strategies, things like that, that can distract us. Another thing, it's funny you brought this up because years ago, it's been about 15 years. My first love is the Silva Method. I've been with them 41 years. I've been very blessed and fortunate. I mean, it's my calling, so to speak, and it's my career, my vocation, my avocation. And yet I've diversified. So from time to time, like in Hartford, in many of the hospitals, like St. Francis Hospital, I was on St. Francis Care Today, because I developed a program called Sleep Like a Baby. And we took some of these things, and I think we spent 2, maybe 3 hours teaching relaxation techniques and strategies to help people sleep. So which I haven't done in a good many years. So it's interesting you brought that up because...
So you said this isn't a quick fix, it's a process.
Correct.
But if someone gets up in the middle of the night, does the deep breathing that you talked about, and so I'm assuming part of it is it changes our physiology, but it quiets the mind as well. Is it a process, or if we just remembered to do that every time, it is a quick fix?
It's a process, meaning there's a combination of things, that the breathing by itself helps in most instances, but when somebody is in a state of overwhelm, then maybe there's panic, and there's a complex cascading of chemical changes. The neurochemistry changes, our heart rate changes, cortisol levels increase in the body. When that happens, it's much, much, much more challenging to slow down. So, frankly, the most effective technique or tool is to practice ahead of time when you're not under pressure, and that you build in, that you have developed resources of being able to relax on command. So you do that when there's no, like an athlete, when there's no pressure. Then when you're in a situation like that, it's easier to turn the switch on, so to speak, because you have it developed, you've rehearsed it. And that's what I meant by it's a process. So that once you've got that integrated, then it is easier.
And if one were to do this, would it be easier to fall asleep too?
Yes, definitely. The breathing, or even something as, if you don't mind me mentioning, something as simple as sleeping in as dark a room as possible. I mean, I'll laugh when my wife watches this; she'll laugh. But we have our cable box. We have a TV in the bedroom, and the cable box has it's illumined. It's got a light. So I put a pillow in front of it when we go to sleep at night to keep the room as dark, and we have blackout shades. Well, the darker the room, the better, because the pineal gland, if there's any light, like an LED light from your cell phone or from the clock, it can fool the brain into thinking it's time to wake up. That's why when people change time zones, and now they should be going to sleep, but it's light out, it's hard initially for the person because the biological cycle takes over. So sleeping in as dark a room as possible, not drinking too, especially people our age, not drinking too much a couple of hours before sleep, because then we're going to wake up to need to use the restroom. So things like that, just being aware of the body's needs and recognizing that no matter how we look, as we grow older, our body has different needs.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because the night when the power went out, I sent my friends an email and said, I have to remember to sleep in pitch darkness, because it was so easy to go to sleep, and I'm sure I slept through the night too.
Well, also, it's perfect. If I can take a quick little story. My wife's father, Max, when he was alive, he passed away this March. When he was alive, he was notorious not sleepwalker, but he couldn't sleep. He'd wake up early and he'd be up and down. He would come to visit us. They live in New Jersey. They'd visit us in Connecticut. We live in Farmington. And he'd be sleeping in our basement, and there's no windows. It's fully finished. It's very nice, but it's pitch black. We'd have to go down and check if he was still alive, because he'd sleep like he never slept before. Same reason. And part of that is because light, of our 5 senses, if there's any input, the more input there is to the brain, the more active we are. The more dynamic we are, and that's what keeps us awake. So light, about 86% of the information that comes in from the environment is through light. So when there's little or no light, or as you said, pitch black, it's easier to sleep. And then if there's little or no sound, so some people wear earplugs or maybe a headset or something like that, because maybe they have noisy neighbors or there's traffic on their road. Those are things that can be disruptive to the sleep
Okay,
cycles.
so turning the radio on thinking that's going to help us sleep is not right.
In fact, I recommend not to sleep with anything on,
Okay.
whether it be TV or radio, even a beautiful poetry, even beautiful positive affirmations. People ask me this all the time, like these subliminal tapes to play while you're
yes.
sleeping. Sleep is for sleep. And anytime there's anything going on in the environment, it stimulates the brain. Even though you're sleeping okay, because part of preventing overwhelm is that we're getting a good quality rest. And if you look at some of the research at the National Sleep Foundation, Dr. William DeMont, who's, I think he's been researching as long as I've been involved in Silva, he says we need, depending on circumstances, anywhere from a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And under certain conditions, we might need more because it helps keep us sane.
Yeah.
It helps release the tensions that build up psychologically and also physiologically for the body in balance. So it's like a baby who, I remember when our children were young, oh boy, he's going to sleep great tonight, my first child, because he didn't nap today. Oh, brother, were we wrong? Because they're so overtired, they're overwhelmed, it's even harder. It's the same thing with adults. If they're overwhelmed and the physiology is off, it's going to be much harder to go to sleep. And that's why if people take a little, we call them, a power break, a power nap during the day, they'll be more productive, they'll make less mistakes, they'll be more accurate, they'll think better, they'll prevent a lot of what people call senior moments, are usually stress moments. Because overwhelm was at first identified in our language, I would say maybe 10, 15 years ago. Now it's become popularized. But part of what happens is the blood vessels constrict, so there's less blood to the brain, less oxygen to the brain, and then cognition goes, and people go, duh, we can't think.
Yeah.
It's like, where do I begin? So many of these stress management strategies that people learn, or like things you're asking me, they're very effective and they're brilliant. However, when people are overwhelmed, you can kiss it goodbye.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want to do, or even have the capacity to do, is to think clearly, let alone go through, cognitive exercise. So that's why I'm really a proponent of a meditation process, whether it be mindfulness meditation or TM or the Silva Method or breathing techniques that people use. If people just did that, they'd have a much better quality of life. In fact, if I may, I'll plug a book. It's not even our own book. It's written. It's called How God Changes Your Brain. And some of the people here at the studio may even know it because the authors of it spoke here in Connecticut. I know them personally, these neuroscientists.
Yeah, I've seen them
We've
speak.
befriended
Yeah.
Mark Waldman and Dr. Andrew Newberg. Recently, Dr. Newberg left University of Pennsylvania, but he was there like forever. And the long story short is they did tens of thousands of brain scans, fMRIs. And they researched some of these very popular, expensive games that people buy for the brain, and they found that they're questionable, if anything, really helping. And they came up with 8 exercises for the health of the brain, proven to improve neuroplasticity, proven to strengthen our ability to be resilient and bounce back. And
Give an example.
well, can you guess what number 1 is? You already said it. See if you remember what you opened with.
Oh, what
tonight.
did I already say? Now I'm being tested with my age. I imagine it has something to do with sleeping well.
Well, just before that, optimism.
Okay.
Hope, feeling a sense of hope. So the book is How God Changes Your Brain is really not about God. It's about how faith in something more than ourselves, a belief that things can be better. Shirley, we can improve things. We've been through a tough time, and we've experienced this, and we can work it out. Maybe it's going to take us 100 years, maybe it'll take us 10 days, but somehow, some way, we're committed to it, and we'll work. Even if we fake it, they found that even if people fake it, that sense of hope, of the promise of something better, is the single most powerful exercise to improve the health of the brain. And why that works is the science behind it is the thalamus, command center in the brain, does not distinguish between what we vividly imagine and what we actually experience. And that's why worrying can be your worst enemy.
Yeah.
It's put more people in the grave prematurely.
What is the second thing in his list
I
of
don't
8?
There's 8. I don't remember number 2. I remember number 1.
Okay.
They bring that up a lot.
Yeah.
But correct me. I believe number 4 is meditation, relaxation techniques,
Yeah.
if I'm remembering correctly. One of the others is exercise. But it's funny, they said regular exercise, whether it be a gentle walk, and then another one in there is aerobic activity, getting the heart rate going.
Yeah.
So they distinguish 2 different. Another one is intellectual stimulation, being engaged in conversation with someone, having a dialogue, being active mentally, which is what they're saying there. Reading a good book, or having a discussion with somebody. Those are some of the more prominent ones that they found very, very helpful. Even I remember in University of California in Irvine, God, this had to be in the 70s or early 80s. It's been a long haul, so forgive me the date. But they were talking about how to prevent Alzheimer's and age-related dementias by regular activity, physical activity and mental activity. And anybody who's ever cared for the aged knows that keeping active is important at any age.
Yeah.
To promote resiliency and health. And this is what they're demonstrating. So that's why I like a dynamic meditation process. It's not passive sitting back, which is beautiful. If you just do that, it's beautiful. However, the dynamic meditation is once you achieve that, you can then use creative visualization. And you can maybe take a few strokes off your golf game or train yourself to unlearn the sleepless nights and sleep better. For example, I used to suffer from headaches constantly. I mean, in fact, when I told my mother my interest, we used to be known as Silva mind control, meaning self-mind control. When I told my mother that interest, she turned white as a ghost, took out her rosary beads and started praying for me with that. But when she saw 6 months, 9 months, a year later, I was hardly ever dipping into the Anacin bottle anymore for headaches. And when she asked me, I said, I don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And after about 14 months, I stopped getting them. That's what I meant by it's a process.
Yeah.
So it wasn't overnight, but I don't get them anymore. I'm done.
So don't suffer from overwhelm, sleep through the night. Our brains are more relaxed and alive, and there are all these positive things happening. And then you also teach creativity and intuition.
Yeah.
So talk about what creativity and intuition are and how you learn to use those things.
Well, it's funny, it fits with the idea of hope and optimism, because let's just talk some possibilities. What's a possible future for us? We've gone through some life changes. We've made some adjustments, maybe with career, and however it is, people retiring. If people just spend some time thinking with a good friend or someone supportive or their coach or whoever about possibilities, that will get them engaged and thinking, hopeful. That we're not stagnant. We're always learning. So that's a very beginning phase. To do that and then to begin to visualize it, because what you're doing is like the athlete training, disciplining the body, because once there's a neural path created, it becomes habitual. And that's again why it's a process, that there's a period of time for a new habit to be created and an old habit to be deleted and desensitized, so to speak. And so that's what I meant.
Okay. So now I want to ask you, because you travel around the world, how are people different? Is what people suffer from different? Are the symptoms different? Are the results different?
It's funny you say that. I would say yes and no to that. On the one hand, I'm spoiled because I'm part of an international organization, and I've been blessed to travel around the world doing programs and working with translators. So people are very kind to me, and they're very gracious, and I'm in the business of people know we're here to help them with that. And I find that people are people. We have some of the same needs. We have families. We care about our spouse. We care about our children. We care about our community. Same thing. What I do find, though, culturally is that here in the US, for example, where there's much more available in terms of personal development, spiritual development, there's a bit of an attitude of, been there, done that, a lot of intellectualizing, which is very different. You asked me before about myself. I think I'm in the shape I'm in because I walk the talk. I live these principles. I practice. It's a practice for me. It's not an intellectual pursuit, that I'm studying, reading in a book, which doesn't do much other than satisfying your curiosity. So I find that Eastern Europeans, wow, they are so open. I mean, they're just so hungry for information that if we share a technique and say, all right, here's a strategy, here's a technique, they do it. And if we're in the class and we're in a process, it's okay, we're going to break up into groups of 2, and I'd like you to do this and do that, they go right to it. No cajoling. I mean, they're there immediately. And I noticed that more so than in the US. In the US is more of, like I said, that been there, done that kind of mentality. And I don't mean disrespect, because I'm a US guy myself too, and I love being here, and I don't want to live anywhere but the US. I do notice that culturally. Also, I think in the Eastern Bloc countries, where there's so much repression of information, that in the new democracies especially, wow, they've really taken off. It's exciting. I mean, I'll go there and have hundreds and hundreds of people in a presentation that here locally I might have 20 to 50. by comparison.
Yeah. So if they're more open and they're more willing to do the exercises, do they change faster, or does the attitude actually help them in the process?
I don't know if it'd be accurate to say they change faster. It does seem that way, though, at times. It does seem that they're more responsive and that they work more miracles. For example, in the area of health and well-being, I had the privilege to work with Dr. O'Carl Simonton. Dr. Simonton is an oncologist. He passed away a couple of years ago. And he wrote the book Getting Well Again, and he was doing work with cancer patients using chemotherapy, radiation, nutrition, counseling, and meditation. He was using Silva techniques. And he had incredible results with some people, not everybody. When you go into Europe, in Eastern Europe especially, and they apply these techniques, I see what appears to be more dramatic results more consistently.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask you as we wrap up, what do you do? Because you look great, you sound great, you found your passion. Talk a little bit, if you would, for a couple of minutes about what you do and some final tips you would give our audience on how to look great, feel great, and be at the top of their game.
Shelley, you're so on top of this yourself too. Just what you nailed, passion in that sense. I love what I do, and I recommend people follow your heart. My advice to my own children is follow your heart, you can do no wrong. It's not about the money. You'll always have more than enough if you follow your heart and you do the right thing and you stay in integrity, because then you don't feel guilty. And you can go to sleep at night knowing that you did right by your clients or your family or your friends. I think that's most essential. Second is having a relaxation technique or strategy. I mean, obviously I love the Silva Method. I think it's of great value, but like mindfulness, transcendental meditation, yoga. People need to take naps during the day just to diffuse for 5-10 minutes. And all the research shows you'll be more productive as busy as your schedule is. I also walk 5 days a week. And nothing crazy, I just walk vigorously. And I do some stretching 5 days a week, getting active, or maybe, go dancing. As far as eating, I love chocolate. My wife and I love dark chocolate. But dark chocolate's much better, so we eat dark chocolate. And I love a good cheesecake. But I don't eat it every day.
Yeah.
I eat it occasionally. So just following that and honoring our body and keeping the toxic levels down.
Okay, great. Ken, it was a pleasure to have you on the
thank
show.
you.
I hope you will come back and give us some more tips.
Well, thank you. I love it. Thank you for this
Great,
opportunity.
thank you. And thanks so much for watching Ageless. I'm Shelley Forrester, and remember, when it comes to age, what's important is attitude and not the number of candles on your cake. See you next time.